Think about every empire you've ever heard of. Rome, Britain, Spain, Mongolia. What did they all have in common? Soldiers, ships, colonies, land. They conquered territory, they extracted resources. They built monuments to their power, and eventually they all collapsed. Now, ask yourself this. What if the most powerful empire in history never invaded anyone? What if it didn't need to? What if instead of sending armies to foreign capitals, it simply made sure every transaction on Earth required its permission? That's not a hypothetical. That's the system we live in today. The United States doesn't rule the world the way Rome did. It doesn't need to. Because somewhere between 1945 and now, something fundamental changed about how power works. The most powerful empire doesn't own colonies. It owns the currency everyone needs. For most of human history, power had a simple formula. Control land, extract wealth. Repeat. Rome built roads so its legions could move faster. Britain built a navy so no one else could move at all. Empires were expensive. You needed soldiers to conquer, administrators to govern, ships to patrol, forts to defend. And you had to be there. Proximity mattered. If you couldn't reach a place with your military, you didn't control it. This model worked for centuries, but it had a fatal flaw. It required constant violence. Every colony was a potential rebellion. Every trade route needed protection. Every border needed guards. The cost of maintaining an empire eventually exceeded the wealth it could extract. Britain learned this the hard way. By 1945, the empire that once controlled a quarter of the world's land was broke, not weakened, broke. 2 world wars had drained its treasury. Its colonies were restless. Its currency was no longer trusted, and Britain wasn't alone. By the end of World War II, the old imperial system had broken, not because of ideology, because the math stopped working. The world needed a new model. It got one. Picture the world in 1946. Europe's factories are rubble. Japan is occupied. China is in civil war. Global trade has essentially stopped. Why? Because no one trusts anyone else's money. Before the war, currencies were backed by gold, but the war had depleted gold reserves. Countries couldn't trade because they couldn't settle debts. You can't buy grain from Argentina if Argentina doesn't believe your currency is worth anything. The world didn't just need reconstruction. It needed liquidity, a way to move value across borders without physically shipping gold bars. Enter the United States. America had something no one else did. Half the world's gold reserves. Untouched infrastructure. A manufacturing base that had just won a war on 2 continents. But more importantly, it had surplus. While Europe was importing food to survive, America was exporting everything. The world needed dollars to buy American goods. And America had plenty to lend. This wasn't charity, it was opportunity. Because in that moment of desperation, the United States offered the world a deal. Not conquest, coordination. In 1944, before the war even ended, representatives from 44 countries met in a small town in New Hampshire, Bretton Woods. What they designed there wasn't a treaty, it was architecture. Here's how it worked. The US dollar would be pegged to gold, $35 per ounce. Fixed, guaranteed. Every other currency would peg to the dollar. If you wanted to trade globally, you converted your currency into dollars. Dollars were as good as gold, and gold was universal. It sounds technical, but the logic was simple. The world needed one currency everyone could trust, and the only country with enough gold to back that trust was America. So the dollar became the central highway of global trade, not through force, through design. Countries didn't have to join, but if they wanted access to capital, to trade, to rebuild, the path ran through the dollar, and most importantly, the system worked. Trade resumed. Economies grew. The dollar became synonymous with stability. But here's the part most people miss. This wasn't just about economics. It was about power, because once the world's transactions depended on your currency, you didn't need to occupy territory. You were already inside every balance sheet. Let's destroy a myth right now. The dollar didn't dominate because America forced anyone to use it. It dominated because the alternatives were worse. Think about what a reserve currency actually does. It's not just money, it's insurance. If your economy crashes, you need dollars to buy imports. If your currency collapses, you need dollars to stabilize it. If you want to borrow internationally, lenders want repayment in dollars. Why? Because dollars are liquid. You can convert them into anything, anywhere, instantly. No other currency offered that in 1950 or 1970 or even today. Countries could opt out. Some tried. But opting out meant cutting yourself off from the largest pool of capital on Earth. It meant higher borrowing costs. It meant vulnerability. So they didn't. Japan rebuilt using dollar-denominated loans. Germany anchored its recovery to dollar trade. Even the Soviet Union, ideologically opposed to America, traded oil for dollars. Because the dollar wasn't a political choice, it was a practical one. And here's the deeper insight. Power didn't create the system. The system created the power. America didn't force the world onto the dollar and then become dominant. The world chose the dollar, and that choice made America dominant. It's a feedback loop. And once it starts, it's nearly impossible to stop. In 1971, the US abandoned the gold standard. Dollars were no longer backed by anything physical. Most people thought this would kill the system. It didn't. It supercharged it. Here's why. That same decade, oil became the most important commodity on Earth. And oil, everywhere on the planet, was priced in dollars. Saudi Arabia sells oil to Japan. Japan pays in dollars. Saudi Arabia now has dollars. What does Saudi Arabia do with those dollars? It can't eat them. It can't burn them for fuel. So it invests them in US Treasury bonds, in American real estate, in dollar-denominated assets. This is called petrodollar recycling. And it creates a loop. The world needs dollars to buy energy. Energy exporters need dollar assets to store wealth. Demand for dollars stays high. The US can borrow cheaply. It imports more. The cycle continues. Every barrel of oil became a vote of confidence in the dollar. Not because of American military power, because of structural necessity. You could hate US foreign policy. You could resent American culture. But if you needed energy, you needed dollars. And that meant the dollar didn't just survive the end of gold backing. It became more powerful without it. Let's compare. Old empires conquer land, station soldiers, extract resources, repeat. The dollar system. Provide liquidity, enable trade, collect interest. One requires occupation, the other requires dependency. One rules people, the other rules transactions. Here's the key difference. If Britain wanted to control India, it needed administrators, railroads, and regiments. If the US wants to influence India today, it just needs India to borrow, trade, or save in dollars. No invasion, no annexation, just incentives. And this is much harder to rebel against. You can overthrow a colonial governor. You can't overthrow a currency system without an alternative. You can fight soldiers. You can't fight liquidity. The old empires inspired resistance because the oppression was visible. The dollar system doesn't feel like oppression. It feels like the way things work. That's the genius of it. It's not that America controls every country. It's that every country operates within a system where American influence is ambient. You don't see it, but it shapes every decision. Where to borrow, what to trade, how to save. Empires used to rule by belief. People believed in the divine right of kings, in the superiority of the colonizer. The dollar rules by necessity. You don't have to believe in it. You just have to use it. So, can anyone break the system? Let's be clear about what that would require. First, trust. A reserve currency isn't just stable, it's predictable. Investors need to know it won't be weaponized. China's yuan is controlled by Beijing. Capital controls limit convertibility. That's not a reserve currency. That's a managed currency. Second, liquidity. There have to be enough assets denominated in your currency for the world to buy. Deep bond markets, transparent legal systems. The Eurozone has liquidity, but it's fragmented across nations. No single fiscal authority. Third, alternatives have to be better, not just different. Gold, limited supply. You can't expand a gold-based economy without discovering more gold. Bitcoin, volatile, unregulated, experimental. BRICS nations talk about a new currency, but they don't trust each other enough to build one. Reserve currencies aren't announced, they're earned. The British pound was the reserve currency before the dollar. It took 2 world wars and a financial collapse to dethrone it. The dollar hasn't faced anything close to that. Could it happen? Yes. Is it happening now? No. Alternatives exist, replacements don't. Not yet. But here's what most people miss. This system doesn't just benefit America, it corrodes it. How? When the world demands dollars, the US has to supply them. That means running trade deficits, importing more than it exports, year after year. Why would any country do that? Because the alternative is a dollar shortage. And a dollar shortage means global recession. So America imports. It borrows cheaply. It consumes. And over time, this has consequences. Manufacturing jobs move overseas. Factories close. Entire regions hollow out. Meanwhile, finance grows. Because when your currency is the global reserve, your most profitable export is debt. Wall Street thrives. Main Street suffers. Asset prices inflate. The wealthy get wealthier. Inequality rises. The very system that gives America global influence undermines its domestic stability. It's a Faustian bargain. You get cheap imports and geopolitical leverage, but you sacrifice industrial capacity and economic balance. Some economists call this the exorbitant privilege, but privilege has a price, and America is paying it. So let's zoom out. What actually happened here? The United States didn't conquer the world. It didn't need to. It built a system where every country's self-interest aligned with American centrality. Not through ideology, through infrastructure. The dollar became the rail system of global commerce. And once the tracks were laid, everyone used them. Because the cost of building a parallel system was too high. This is how power works now. Not through domination, through indispensability. Rome controlled trade routes with legions. America controls them with liquidity. The Mongols demanded tribute. The dollar system extracts it through interest rates and capital flows. The British Empire taxed colonies. The US taxes the world through inflation and seigniorage. Different methods, same outcome. One entity at the center, everyone else negotiating around it. The empire didn't disappear, it evolved. Empires rise when people believe in them. They fall when that belief breaks. But the dollar system doesn't require belief, it requires participation. And participation, once embedded, is harder to escape than any army. You can refuse to salute a flag, but you can't refuse to settle a debt. That's the difference between conquest and architecture. One rules by force, the other by function. And right now, the function is still running. Whether that's power or vulnerability depends on what comes next. If this video made you think, do me a favor, hit the like button. And subscribe to Histonom, because I dive deep into topics like this every day.